Good morning. My name is Danielle Coco, and I'm the marketing director at Susta. We are excited to hear from Ian Chen with SMH International. SMH has been Susta's consultant based in China and Hong Kong for over a decade, helping our U.S. companies export to that area. And today we are going to hear from Ian about exporting U.S. seafood to China and Hong Kong. This is in relation to a trade mission that we are hosting in October. We are bringing seafood importers from those two countries to Virginia and Maryland. So if you're in Virginia and Maryland and are interested in exporting to China and Hong Kong, definitely take a look at that. I'll be sending links to those trade missions when I send a follow-up from this webinar. But we're really excited to hear from Ian about the state of things and seafood imports into those two Asian markets. So Ian, thanks for staying up late and doing this with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danielle, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you all here today about exporting seafood to China and Hong Kong. And obviously, as Danielle mentioned, this is in relation to our inbound trade mission to Virginia and Maryland. So hopefully this is going to be helpful for you to understand a little bit more about these two markets and the potential that it carries. So without further ado, all right, presentation started. So before we get into specific seafood products and their markets, let's provide a little bit of background information about the two markets that we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, it's China, or mainland China to be specific. So obviously China is currently the second largest economy in the world and a emerging superpower in the world. So although China is no longer growing at the double-digit pace that it was growing at in the early 2000s, the economy continues to show remarkable resilience from the impact of COVID. And despite the global challenges, 2024 saw 5% growth in terms of GDP and a 5.3% growth in terms of per capita income. And with food and beverage spending accounting for over 32% of China's total consumption. And that is another 5.4% increase in terms of growth. So China used to be primarily a manufacturer and exporting country, but it is making a lot of inroads in terms of growing through internal consumption. And consumption continues to be a key driver for economic growth. And that is shown in retail sales of the country. So retail sales in China have been growing fairly steadily over the years, but it's seen some up and downs over the years of 2020 and 2023 during COVID. And in 2023, the year that China officially reopened to the world, the economy grew by 7% before kind of steadying down back to 3.5% last year. And the food and drink sector was one of several primary sectors which experienced robust growth, and food sales grew by 10%, and that outpaced most other retail sectors. And even more so, China is currently the world's largest online retail market and has been the largest for 12 consecutive years. E-commerce sales reached $216 billion in 2024, and this creates unique opportunities for companies to tap into the market, to this channel, where there are 1.1 billion internet users, and the way they shop are increasingly diversified with both traditional e-commerce channels, what is called cross-border e-commerce, as well as social media commerce, all being used by different demographics and age groups in different areas of China. As for food service, recovery in the sector has been quite steady. And although there are still some uncertainties, the market is still continuing to expand. And this is backed by the fact that restaurant revenue growing by 5.3% in 2024 to $762 billion, which outpaced the average retail sales growth. And while people are resuming to being outside and dining out at restaurants, especially during this time of the year where kids are out of school and they're just crowding the malls and restaurants, the online ordering and food delivery sector is massive, and it is a critical revenue driver for restaurants. As a matter of fact, here's a fun fact. So 56,000 online food orders are delivered every minute here in China. And more than 30% of consumers have ordered food delivery 5 to 10 times a week. China imports food and agricultural products from all over the world, and the number of countries China is importing continues to grow as supplies try to catch up with huge demand from the people here. And in 2024, China imported $237 million worth of agricultural. I might be wrong about this. Could be billion. I'm going to check that. So they imported $237 million worth of agricultural products from around the world, with Thailand, Brazil, and New Zealand making up the top three, and with the U.S. right behind in fourth place, which really underscores the competitiveness of U.S. exports in the Chinese market. And U.S. products are well known for their quality, safety, and also sustainability. And it is continued to be favored by importers and consumers alike. So 18 product categories accounted for 92% of total U.S. agricultural, forest, and seafood exports to China. And some of the top consumer-oriented products include beef, food preparations, tree nuts, pork, dairy products, in addition to seafood. So this is a general introduction and overview of the mainland Chinese market, and this is Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is a former British colony, and today it is a special administrative region of China, which has its own autonomy to a degree. So we consider it a separate market from mainland China. So the city is located at the southern tip of China, and has the fourth densest population in the world, with a population of 7.5 million. It is a dynamic city which has a diverse cultural background and was once one of Asia's most prosperous markets. But COVID did take a huge hit on the city, and recovery is still slow. So the economy grew by 2.5% last year, which was at the lower end of most industry forecasts. But then with a GDP per capita of just over 54,000 US dollars, it is one of the highest in Asia. And consumers in Hong Kong continue to have high purchasing power. With trade slowed slowed down over the years, the economy in Hong Kong continues to rely heavily on domestic consumption. We did see solid growth in the first quarter of 2025 at 3.1%, and the government is forecasting an improvement in terms of the economy in the entire 2025. So for the entire year of 2024, the value of Hong Kong's total retail sales decreased by 7.3% to $48 billion, with food sales accounting for $11.8 billion. The recovering tourism sector played an important role in boosting retail sales, with May 2025, which was 3 months ago, being the first month that it has recorded positive growth since February 2024. So Hong Kong is a small city, and most people prefer to shop at supermarkets or wet markets or convenience stores. Online was never really a popular means for people to go grocery shopping, but this was until COVID. So during all of the restrictions and lockdown, a lot of e-commerce platforms began to emerge, and has since showed a lot of growth, with e-commerce sales reaching $4 billion last year. Now, as one of the gastronomical capitals of the world, the food service sector is a key component in Hong Kong's economy. It has over 17,000 licensed eateries as of last year, with many Michelin restaurants offering a variety of local and international cuisine. And sales revenue was estimated at $14 billion in both 2023 and 2024, which is close to returning to pre-pandemic levels. Growth for Chinese restaurant was slow, but fast food shops recorded continuous growth, with an increase of 18% in 2023 and 7% last year. And restaurants are purchasing more in those 2 years than the time during COVID. But profit margin is tightening, and the 23% margin that was reported is considerably lower than the likes of other regional markets, let's say Vietnam, where the margin is in the high 30s. And also this is because of the high rental costs. A lot of local eateries are being pushed out, and new players began to swoop in. A lot of them are from mainland China and also some from Southeast Asia. This is raising the stakes for a lot of local operators who have to innovate or risk being outcompeted. So Hong Kong has a very limited production capacity for food and agriculture. So almost 95% of all food supply in the city is imported. And it is also very business friendly. So it is a tax-free port. So Hong Kong imports into Hong Kong from, I should say, Hong Kong imports a lot of food products from different countries. In fact, Hong Kong's global imports of agriculture and related products amounted to about $24 billion in 2024, but remained stable. It was a small drop at 1%, but it remained stable at $6.4 billion in the first quarter of this year. And most importantly, Hong Kong has a very long history of importing from the US and remains a major market for US products. Agriculture and related products exports from the US to Hong Kong reached nearly $1.6 billion in 2024, which makes it the third largest supplier behind mainland China and Australia. And it is the second largest supplier of consumer-oriented products, so that includes seafood, with export of $1.5 billion. So that's a brief overview of both markets, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into the seafood market for both. So let's start off with mainland China. So China is both a major producer and importer of seafood, with domestic production hitting 74 million metric tons in 2024, which is an increase of 4%. Aquaculture production is estimated at around 61 million tons, which is up 2 million tons from the year before. Production of ocean and freshwater wild-caught seafood is up slightly from 13.1 million tons to 13.3 million tons. And China produces a wide variety of seafood, but fish is the predominant product, making up just over half of all aquaculture production. The main species are carp at around 19 million tons, tilapia at 1.8 million tons, and catfish at 440,000 tons. Crustacean productions reached around 7.4 million tons, with shrimp and crayfish, crawfish, however you want to call it, being the main products. Shellfish production reached around 17 million tons in the year before, 2023. And production was forecasted to grow in 2024. We don't have the number, but let's see. So overall, the seafood production in China is likely to show moderate growth on expanded aquaculture area and also improved production efficiency. So besides production, China is also a global hub for seafood processing, with products coming in from all over the world, mainly mackerel, salmon, cod, and herring, to be processed before being either consumed domestically or re-exported. Production of processed seafood was around 22 million tons in 2023, which is up from the 21.5 million tons in 2022. But China actually has an estimated total processing capacity of 30 million tons. So it's still not completely at full capacity. So the sector is actually gradually recovering from COVID to levels that are pre-pandemic. But many companies are encountering challenges associated with the weak recovery in overseas demand and also rising processing costs. And of the many countries China export seafood to, Japan, the US, and South Korea were amongst the top destinations in 2024. Exports of fish fillet and also prepared and packaged crustaceans and mollusks increased by 23% and 19% by volume last year. So even though, as you mentioned, China is a major seafood producer, demand still exceeds supply, and China relies on imports for a lot of its seafood. So imports peaked in 2023 at 4.6 million tons as domestic consumption increased post-COVID. And there was a gradual recovery of demand for processed seafood from overseas. And speaking of domestic consumption, traditionally, consumption comes mostly from coastal areas of the country in eastern and southern China. But new growth areas are coming from northeast China as well as central China, where you usually don't get a lot of seafood. Now back to imports. Russia, given its close relationship with China and affected by the embargo on their exports to other countries, exported around record amounts of seafood over the past years. And this is followed by Ecuador with 700,000 tons, Vietnam at 330,000 tons, India at 320,000 tons, and both Indonesia and the US both exported around 280,000 tons. And frozen fish accounted for over 53% of imports in China at 2.3, 2.4 million tons, followed by crustaceans at 1.2 million tons, and mollusk at around 440,000 tons. In the US, as mentioned earlier, is China's sixth largest seafood supplier in the world, with around 280,000 tons and a 6% market share. So for the US, China is a vital trade partner for seafood, being the second largest importer in the world in 2024, only behind Canada, and more than doubled Japan's export, which is in third place. So exports of seafood from the US to China grew marginally at 1% in volume terms, and saw a small drop in value terms of 2% to just over $1 billion. This is still the third highest year of for the US when it comes to seafood exports to China in both volume and value terms since 2018, which was the year when the trade war happened. So this suggests China still has a huge demand for US seafood, despite the challenges with the trade relationship between the two. And the most popular products were American lobsters, fish meal, squid, cod, crabs, and salmon. And other key imports include pollock, ocean perch, yellowfin sole, geoduck, and flatfish. I know many of these products are caught or produced in either the Northeast or in around the Alaska waters. So when we took a closer look into products exported from the South, we were able to see that China is also a key export destination, ranking second in the world. In 2024, China imported $54.6 million worth of seafood from southern United States, making it the third best export year since 2018. And over half of the exports were rock lobsters or crawfish, but we also see flatfish, shrimp, and live crabs having the most substantial growth in last year. Now, on the other hand, for Hong Kong, it is famous for its use of seafood in various cuisines. And so naturally, it has one of the highest seafood consumption per capita rates in Asia and maybe the world. Seafood is popular in both local Cantonese cuisine restaurants, as well as in Japanese and also other Western restaurants, in addition to hotel buffets. Now, Hong Kong was once a fishing village, but today's production is very limited, with only around 20% of seafood supplied in the city being locally produced. So today, the local aquaculture industry includes marine fish culture, pond fish culture, and also oyster culture, which you can see on the left side of those, which is right outside of the city. You can see all the skyscrapers behind it. So the majority of fisheries there are operated by local families who produce around 92,000 tons of mainly sardine, mullets, croaker, sea breams, crabs, and oysters. Because of its limited production resources and also the scale of the industry, the majority of seafood in Hong Kong is imported from overseas. So how much are we talking about? So around 80% of the seafood that is consumed in Hong Kong is imported. So this makes it a significant player in the global seafood trade, despite the limited size of the city. And in fact, seafood was the top food import for Hong Kong in 2024. And of the $3.1 billion of seafood it imported, around 2.4 billion of it were consumed internally, and 687 million worth of it were re-exported. And that mainly goes to its neighbor Macau, which is famous for its gaming industry. And Macau imported around, no, I should say Hong Kong re-exported around $390 million worth of seafood to Macau, and 122 went to South Korea, and 49 million went to mainland China. So the people in Hong Kong love their seafood, and at 65 kilograms per year, Hong Kong has the fifth highest level of per capita consumption of seafood in the world. So seafood consumption is not a trend, but a long-standing tradition. And the need for seafood is evident, with Hong Kong importing seafood from 165 countries and regions from the year 2012 to 2021 through all the highs and lows. So around half of it are from mainland China, but they mostly consist of lower value products. Other main suppliers include Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, the US, and also Thailand, who supply a variety of products of different values. And the majority of imports into Hong Kong are frozen and live seafood, and a composition of frozen products is especially diverse. It is made up of a variety of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. For live products, half of the imports were made up of grass carp and other freshwater fishes, with the rest being a mix of mollusks and clams. Now for the US, just like mainland China, Hong Kong is another vital trade partner, ranking 6th in the world last year, having imported $139 million worth of seafood. But on the other hand, it's interesting when we look at the volume that it imported, it ranks only 23rd in the world at just over 5,700 tons, much lower than many other top export destinations, which implies that Hong Kong has a particular preference for premium high value seafood. And this is evident when we look at the trade statistics, where geoduck has the largest market at $67 million, followed by live American lobster at $16 million, live eels, frozen spiny lobsters, and sablefish rounding out the top 5. And outside of the top 5, we have rock lobsters, mollusks, frozen lobsters, fish fillets, oysters, and crab. So those made up the top 10 US exports to Hong Kong. And for Southern United States, main exports include rock lobsters and crawfish at $11 million, frozen lobsters, frozen fish fillets, and live or fresh chilled shrimp or prawns as well. So many species from the US, seafood species, saw some degrees of decline in the past year, but we did see substantial growth for frozen shrimps and prawns at 354% growth, frozen clams at 73%, scallops at 589%, and crabs at 235%. So they're not quite on the same level in terms of volume or value as the other top imports that I just mentioned, but that still shows the potential some of these products have in the market. So when identifying key drivers for seafood imports in China and Hong Kong, one of it is the interest in demand for seafood over the past few decades. This is especially in mainland China. So with the improving economy and living standards, seeing a really incredible growth over the past 3 decades, this has led to huge desire and interest from the people here to experience luxury foods like seafood and offer them at special occasions, which really shows off the wealth of the host. And for some other, especially younger consumers, the growth in seafood consumption is mainly driven by the needs to pursue healthier lifestyle choices and also diets. And thanks to the increase in marketing of seafood as a healthier option to meat, for example, omega-3 proteins and also lower fat or low calories. These are some of the marketing points that many other uh, countries or regions have been doing to promote seafood consumption. So that has helped tremendously. And besides individual companies and countries, the Chinese government is also driving this increase in consumption, where greater emphasis was placed on seafood in its 15th five-year plan, which set a production target at 69 million tons, which is 14 million tons more than pork, the predominant choice of meat that is consumed in China. And then you have the rising middle class, which is inclusive of the upper middle class and also the new middle class from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, as well as rural areas. So just to back up a little bit, tier 2 and tier 3 cities are just behind what is called tier 1 cities, the top economic or highest living standards regions in China, cities in China. So consumers in these areas now have the financial means of purchasing higher value foods. So that also meant an increase in seafood consumption. And as far as the distribution channel for seafood in China as well as in Hong Kong, they are both fairly similar. So this graph represents pretty much both markets. So you can see neither of them is based on a centralized distribution system. So it doesn't rely on one or two singular importer or distributor to handle a national distribution. Instead, they both have many different either state-owned, and this is pertaining to mainland China particularly, as well as private importers who purchase these products from overseas suppliers and distribute them to wholesalers or directly to retailers or online platforms, as well as consumers. And for mainland China in particular, a lot of seafood goes to processors who process the products, the raw materials, before being distributed domestically or re-exported to overseas markets. Consumers in both markets tend to equate US seafood with quality, safety, and nutrition, which created a strong foundation of a positive image, and because of that, US seafood is generally considered premium products and are usually found at mid to high end channels like boutique supermarkets and also at high-end hotels. Speaking of hotels, the distribution channel in the food service sector is also similar, with importers distributing products to restaurants and hotels, sometimes through wholesalers, and processors also sometimes supply the products directly to institutions and fast food restaurants. And the end users of premium seafood uh, in both markets include international hotel chains and premium restaurants, where it is popular with Chinese, particularly Chinese, Japanese, and Italian restaurants. And when we talk about China, we have to talk about tariffs, which is by far the biggest barrier and challenge for US seafood exports. So just to give a little bit of background on the trade war. So during the summer of 2018, China began to levy punitive tariffs on US seafood, resulting in an average increase of 35% by the end of 2019. China did offer some incentives to importers in China. In 2019, a tariff exclusion policy was launched by the Tariff Commission of the State Council and was recently set for this. So the exclusion was recently set to end on October 30th, with approved applications remaining valid until December 13th. So all of this has made US seafood less competitive at a time where China was signing more favorable trade agreements with nations like Norway, Russia, Chile, and more. And on top of that, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement came into effect back 3 years ago on January 1st, 2022, which reduced nearly all tariff levels for nations in the region. Key players like South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, Thailand, those are some of the key players in that agreement. And on the other hand, the good thing is, if you're looking at the Hong Kong market, the food import regulations are transparent and they do not impose any trade barriers or regulations or tariffs on US imports. So that includes seafood, which makes it a great alternative choice for exporters. So here is a rough one of parts of the tariff rates that China is currently imposing on seafood coming from the US. So I picked out several key commodities, seafood commodities from mainly southern United States. So you can see some HS code for catfish. We can see crabs. We can see scallops, clams. So in overall, it's such a complicated thing to go through, but in the past 6 months or so, China imposed another 20% of additional tariffs on top of the Section 301 tariffs that were imposed on 2020. So without the tariff reduction, and you can see on the final line there, a lot of seafood coming from the United States are currently taxed at between 30 to 60% tariff. So this is making it difficult for a lot of importers who are interested in US seafood, but just for now cannot move until things clarify a little bit. And just like to go into a little bit about the logistics of exporting seafood to both China and Hong Kong. So without getting way too deep into it, here's a list of the documents required by mainly China when it comes to exporting seafood. So this includes bill of lading, commercial invoice, packing list, certificate, and more importantly, the certificate of origin, which is a must and needs to be completed annually, as well as the health certificate issued by NOAA. in terms of labeling, um, here's a list of items that the Chinese customs require. And the Chinese government has strict guidelines for imported imported food that includes seafood products. And those not meeting the relevant requirements will be refused entry. In Hong Kong, these requirements are less restrictive, and both English or Chinese or in both languages are accepted for entry. Now, back to mainland China, all content on the label needs to be in both English and Chinese, except for any trademarks. And there are also limits in terms of the size of the characters, particularly the Chinese characters, which cannot be smaller than 1.8 millimeters when the surface area of the packing material or container is greater than 20 square centimeters. And any Chinese pinyin, which is the phonetic pronunciation of the Chinese characters or the foreign languages, may also be used corresponding to the Chinese characters, meaning you can have them on top of the Chinese characters, except for the names and the addresses of the manufacturers or the overseas distributor. But they cannot be larger than the Chinese characters. And exporters and importers will need to be registered with the Chinese customs, or GAC, GACC for short. And importers must also have third-party certificate of compliance from FDA, and export health certificate is used for certifying both live and non-live fishery products for exports. And suppliers need to register with GACC. So the GACC registration, just for quick background, was something that went into effect in 2022, which requires all overseas manufacturers or warehouses, exporting facilities to be registered with the Chinese customs. So there, in order for that to happen, you have to go through a registration process. For certain products, it has to be done with the US FDA office, or for certain products, other authorities like the USDA or the NOAA. So there's more details on this particular regulation, and we can provide that information later. So back to that, documents. So a sanitary certificate from an official authorities like the State Department of Ag is necessary for customs. And in some cases, in lieu of the sanitary certificate, the Chinese custom officers will allow a free sales certificate. And the US exporters will need to obtain instructions from your importers when preparing the certificate. And contaminants in fish products must also be observed and meet the relevant guidelines. So that includes lead, mercury, and cadmium level. So in summary, despite some of the current challenges, namely the tariffs, China and Hong Kong both offered great opportunities for seafood suppliers from the United States to grow and expand their businesses. And because Chinese consumers are increasingly displaying preferences for high quality and value-added seafood products, there is a steady increase in the consumption of processed and frozen seafood, with the most popular products for e-commerce being fresh and frozen shrimp, ready-to-eat seafood products, and also fresh and frozen fish products. So seafood from the US, particularly the southern US, could stand to benefit by leveraging its premium brand image and also highlighting characteristics like quality, nutrition, safety, and also sustainability. So these stories will be great highlight points when it comes to marketing overall US seafood to consumers and also importers in these two markets. And last but not least, just like to provide a little bit of information about the trade mission to Virginia and also to Maryland. So the mission is set to be undertaken in October 13th to October 17th. So we'll be spending 2 days of our time with about 6 importers from China and Hong Kong. They will travel to these 2 states and meet with suppliers like yourself during their time in Virginia and also in Maryland. So more information is on the SESTA website, I think. And yeah, well, if you guys have any questions, we can answer it right now.
Great. Thank you, Ian. That was really informative. Every time I was thinking of a question, you then had a slide about it. So like, getting to market and what documents are needed and tariffs. And that was really comprehensive. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you. For companies that do want to participate in the trade missions to Virginia and Maryland, what would you recommend that they prepare in advance? Like, what kind of information do the buyers that are going to be coming in from China and Hong Kong, what will they want to talk about, and what should the US companies have on hand?
So that's a great question. Obviously, if they can have samples on site, that would be wonderful. That is always the best way to showcase your products and actually have the buyers see the quality of it, the packaging, whether that suits their customers or the market. So these are very, very useful. Any product information. I know most Hong Kong importers can speak and read English perfectly, so that's not a problem. Some buyers from mainland China might have a little bit more difficulty when it comes to English. So, but I do have to say, the importers that we'll be recruiting and bringing over will be generally fluent. So that shouldn't be a point to worry. But yes, if there's any any information in Chinese, that will be also very helpful. Business cards, obviously. Yeah, business cards, email, so buyers in Hong Kong are usually okay with using, say, WhatsApp or email for communication, even for business. But a lot of buyers in China, mainland China, they like using this app called WeChat. So they usually like to add each other on WeChat and then have both private and business conversations over that platform. So a lot of them actually don't spend too much time reading emails. So yeah, if a supplier can have that ready, and when they meet these buyers from mainland China, they can add each other and follow up with them on through that channel.
Yeah, that's great advice. Maybe even clarifying what channel of communication the buyer prefers, and then making sure that they, figure that out. Yeah. Okay, that's great advice. Thank you.
Welcome.
And Q&A is open for anyone. Everybody's muted on the webinar just to cut down on background noise, but please type your questions into the Q&A or chat. Anything for Ian about the event or, exports into China and Hong Kong in general. I wish we had a crystal ball to know the future of these tariffs, but I know it's anyone's guess at what's going to happen. Right. No, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. So, like I said, you had such a good comprehensive overview of everything. So if anyone does have questions, please reach out. I will be sending the recording of the webinar out. And I'll also include the links to the trade missions as well as the consultations that you can, if you want to speak with Ian directly, you can reach out to him and I'll send that link. We did just get a question. Is the paperwork the same for Hong Kong?
Very much so. Just less, how should I term it? Less stringent. You can, anything that works for mainland China works for Hong Kong, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it might be a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, another question. Will SESTA let participants know of the companies that will be coming for the inbound mission ahead of time? Yes. What usually happens is once the deadline for the event passes, which I think is next week, then, and Ian, you can chime in too, but then we'll
Sure.
do the matchmaking with the buyers and start putting together a schedule. And at some point after that, you'll get the schedule as well as the buyer profiles. Ian, is that generally?
Overall, it's generally correct, but
Yeah.
the timeline for the buyer information will probably come a bit later.
Okay.
So this is an October mission, so it probably will come at around mid-September
Okay.
or late September.
Okay. Great. How many Virginia producers do you plan on visiting? I think we have up to 10 spots available on our website. So I think it'll just kind of depend on how many people register. We have 2 days allocated for Virginia. So I don't know how those logistics work. I don't plan the event.
Yeah, it also depends on state manager to kind of work with the companies
Right. And like
to
how
decide,
close.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. So I'd say probably, if I had to guess, somewhere between 5 to 10 Virginia producers.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how many companies will be meeting for the one-on-ones. And any extra additional time we have in the state, we can probably allocate them for company visits.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, as I said, I will be in touch via email, and you know how to reach me. Please be in touch with any other questions. Thank you, Ian, so much for staying up late and joining us
Pleasure.
today and giving us all this great information. And we look forward to working with you and having you here for the trade mission.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right.
Hopefully, we'll meet some of the participants here today.
I know I'm drinking coffee. You're probably getting ready for bed, so
Yeah.
just a little different. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much again, and we'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Yeah. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks,
All
Ian.
right. You're welcome.